Well, hello again, everyone. Welcome to the Red and White Authority, episode number 10. I'm Art Regner along with Kevin Allen, and we're looking at what is going to be, I call it the telltale week for the Detroit Red Wings, obviously hosting the Ottawa Senators tomorrow on Tuesday, and then the Boston Bruins again on Thursday, the two teams that are chasing the Red Wings in the standings, and then Saturday, the Red Wings go to Minnesota for a 7 o'clock face-off there. So it's a big week for Detroit. Let's bring in Kevin. And Kevin, first of all, kind of a strange weekend for Detroit. They shut out the Tampa Bay Lightning, considered to be one of the top offensive clubs in all of hockey, if not the number one club. Peter Mrazek didn't face a lot of shots, but he did what he had to do. He won the game. He earned the start the next day, and then is shelled by the New York Islanders, gave up a couple of bad goals. Jimmy Howard comes in, gives up a goal on a shorthanded breakaway, and then really wasn't tested too much during that game. But Howard's in. We assume that Howard's going to go tomorrow night. So I guess my question is that they got 2 points against Tampa, which we thought was a statement game, a game that was very winnable against the New York Islanders, who've had their own struggles lately. Where do you think this team is at this point? I mean, are they slowly working their way out of this slump, or because of the issues that they have in net, it's really just too early to tell what's going on with this team?
Well, I'm sure Mike Babcock has no idea where the team is at. I looked at it as really a lost opportunity for Peter Mrazek. He came off a big win Saturday. Obviously, the Red Wings were looking for someone to step in and sort of stabilize their goaltending simply because Howard is going through a slump, and he had the opportunity to do that on Sunday, and as you said, did not perform at a high level. It was back-to-back games, and he's a young goalie, but we've seen him, Mrazek, I'm speaking of, who have the ability to, after he gives up a poor goal, to settle down, but he didn't do it in this game. And as you mentioned, the Islanders were a struggling team. It was essentially two struggling teams meeting, even though they played a good game against the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think we have to cast this team as a team that's trying to find its game heading into the playoffs. And by losing that game, against the Islanders after taking a 2-0 lead, really the Red Wings, not out of the woods. I think most of us were confident they were going to extend their playoff streak. But, with games against Ottawa and Boston, as you have mentioned, both of those teams with the ability to pass the Red Wings, not right away, but they have them within shouting distance. This is a big week, and I almost feel like they got to beat both the Islanders and Boston. The Islanders, the Senators and Boston, and the Senators. This is a team that's been very, very hot. Hammond's been hurt, their goaltender, but this is a team that I think believes they can still get in the playoffs. And with that game tomorrow night, I expect the Red Wings had better play their best game, or play like they did against the Tampa Bay Lightning, or they're going to find themselves suddenly in a battle just to stay in the postseason.
I know that, Mike Babcock's father passed away. He addressed it yesterday after the game. We certainly send our condolences out to Mike and his family. Obviously, as he said, losing a parent is catastrophic, no matter what age you are, and even if you were prepared for it. He's got a heavy heart. Let's just put it that way. And the reason I bring that up is that, I think he has other things on his mind, but he has to be, I think, beside himself with this goaltending situation. I mean, when you look at Jimmy Howard, again, he should start tomorrow, and the Red Wings had today off, so I'm pretty sure that he's going to be the starting goalie. Yet, when that's all said and done, he has to have a short leash. You don't know where Mrazek is, although he has a history of rebounding. So does that mean, lo and behold, because he's practicing with the team, if Howard struggles against the Tampa Bay Lightning, Jonas Gustafsson, the monster, who Mike Babcock always says great things about, he says, hey, I like him. Every time he's in net for us, the guy performs. It's just he's not in net very often because he's always hurt. Could we see the monster come in here, maybe take a couple of games, maybe win a couple of games? Not that the job's going to be his, per se, but to spell these guys, Mrazek and Howard, while they kind of work it out. I mean, it's a bizarre situation, the final 2 weeks of the season, for the Red Wings to be where they are right now with their goaltending situation.
Well, no question, and I think that's certainly an option that's on the table. If you look at before Howard's injury, if anyone would have said that goaltending would be such a question mark at the end, you would have thought there's no way. I mean, Howard had performed at a high level before his injury, was really having a tremendous season. I remember looking at his save percentage, maybe a couple of weeks before he was injured, and it was in the .920 realm, right up there with the Hope and the Fleuries of the world who were having good seasons. And now, since the coming back from an injury, he's been below 900 in terms of his save percentage, and really has not looked confident. I will say this though. It was almost like the best case scenario for him to get back in the lineup. In that Islanders game, Mrazek hadn't played well, and so Howard is brought back in what I felt was sort of a less pressure-filled situation than Howard would be in if he had started the game, or if he had been asked to come on with the team holding a lead. But in this case, they were behind. He did give up the one goal on a breakaway, but he was solid after that. He wasn't tested. The Islanders didn't put a lot of pressure on. They were just trying to hold on. But it was almost the type of situation that Howard may have needed to get his confidence back. Because that really seems like the issue. I know some fans think that it's an injury situation that he came back too early, but to me it just feels like a psychological issue where he needs to find his form. And he's just leaky. Pucks are just leaking through him, and so who knows? We'll have to see where he's at in the game tomorrow night. And I agree with you. I think it's probably got to be him at this point, and you got to give him the opportunity. And if it doesn't work out, I think you got to look at option C, which is the Monster. And we've seen the Monster perform, for sure. So I think Babcock. I wouldn't feel he feels the situation is desperate, but he needs one of his goalies to step up and claim that position.
Kevin, I want to bring up the subject. I know we've talked about it the last show on episode 9 of the Red and White Authority, and we're talking about it again. There is a feeling among some of the people that have covered the team that I have talked to think that Howard did come back too early from injury, that they were in Washington, they saw it, it looked really serious at that time, that he rushed back because he's never really felt, he being Jimmy Howard, any type of pressure from Jonas Gustafsson. That Gustafsson was a backup and that it was Howard's job. But he really feels the heat with Peter Mrazek and that he might have done it. I mean, I know Jimmy, I know you know him. I sort of know Mrazek. I've talked to him a few times, and I've actually gotten to know the Monster quite well. He's a pretty nice guy. But with all that said, I would be stunned if Jimmy rushed himself back from injury. Although, again, as I said, there's some people that think that maybe he did because he's feeling the heat of Mrazek.
Well, I mean, I guess that's a possibility. Mrazek is a top prospect, viewed as the kind of guy who, is on your A list as a guy who can step in and be a difference maker, that he's a potential Red Wings goalie of the future. I think the assessment of Mrazek is he's proven at the AHL level that he can be a dominant goalie. The only area of concern the Red Wings had about him is that, he's a slightly built goalie. Like, he doesn't have a lot of bulk to him. I think Howard outweighs him by a good 25 pounds or so. And, in the crease battles that occur at the NHL level, I think they feel like a little more strength would serve him well. But I think they do view him as a guy that at some point is going to hold this job. So clearly Jimmy Howard knows that as well, and I'm sure he's feeling, just as any guy would, that he's going to be challenged at some point for that job. But, I've watched him, and it really doesn't feel like, he doesn't have any mobility, which you would think if he had come back too early, he wouldn't. To me, it just looks like a guy that's just trying to find his form. He doesn't seem locked in. I mean, the goals that are beating him are not goals that he can't get to. Like, if you think about him, they're just leaking through him. He's not in position. And to me, that's a goalie that has lost his confidence or hasn't regained his form. He's not sharp, and his awareness of tracking the puck or sort of projecting where the puck is going to go next. And that's the difference between a great goalie and a very good goalie, or a very good goalie and an average goalie, or a hot goalie and a non-hot goalie, is the ability to sort of forecast what's about to happen next, because it's a sense of anticipation and getting your body over. Like most of the saves that are made in this league, it seems, the goalies don't see. It's just a matter of, because there's so much screening going on and so much traffic and so much effort being made to block shots now that's really like a bunker of bodies in front of you. So the strength of a goaltender these days is the ability to sort of track the puck and anticipate where it's going to go and being in the right spot. And right now, Howard doesn't seem like he has that ability, and he certainly did at the start of the season. So to me, that's why I would tend to think it's more of finding his form and his rhythm and his confidence more so than being limited by that groin injury. There could be a trust issue, though, as I mentioned before. Sometimes goalies are healed, they don't feel like they're healed, so they don't trust the groin.
Well, the thing that's I guess troubling against about Peter Mrazek, and granted, I know that he's the guy that all of Detroit is pining for at this point, or looking forward to having him in the net. Nothing against Jimmy, but Jimmy's been in this town long enough; he knows how that thing plays out. But out of his last 12 starts, he's been pulled 4 times. So that's like every third start, right? That he's getting pulled. Just young, should it be a concern? Because if he somehow is the playoff goalie, let's say, either hopefully not, Jimmy re-injures himself or just pulls the chute and is just not the guy, and Babs is forced to go with Mrazek. He's playing every other day. It's not so much back to back, and he's done it, as you said, at the AHL level. But should that be a bit of concern for Red Wing and Red Wing fans that Mrazek? I mean, he's been pulled 4 times in his last 12 starts. That's not very good.
Yeah, no, well, absolutely not. But he's still young. He still has limited NHL experience, and let's face it. I mean, when you watch him play, I think everything that you love about Mrazek also puts him in danger. I mean, he's an ultra aggressive goalie who plays well out above the blue paint. And you saw the goal against the Islanders where he comes out and to challenge Tavares and makes the drop pass, and the guy fires the shot and he stops it, but he's so far out of the blue paint that the guy is able to just go around him and tuck the puck into the open net. So it's a fine line between being uber aggressive and getting yourself out of position to stop rebounds. You either got to cradle those rebounds, or you've got to be deeper into your net. And it's a sharp contrast between a guy like Lundqvist that plays very deep in his net. The only guy that in the NHL that Mrazek reminds me of would be Jonathan Quick, who also comes way out of his crease to make saves. But it served him well at the AHL level. He's just going to have to find his pace at the NHL level, and level of consistency is the last sort of element that comes together for an NHL goalie. And Mrazek has been able to win at the NHL level. The Red Wings won when Howard was not in the net, but Mrazek wasn't always great in those games. He gave up some goals as well.
When you look at what Babcock had to say yesterday, he was asked about. First of all, he said it's a broken record. We can't keep it out of our net. The puck keeps going into our net. I mean, the Red Wings have scored plenty of goals lately, but the thing that I thought was funny is someone, one of the reporters brought up Jimmy Howard. Said, "Well, how did you think Jimmy played?" And he didn't cut him any slack at all. He said, "Well," and I'm paraphrasing obviously here, but he didn't get much work. By essentially saying by that time the game was over. The Islanders didn't need to score any more goals, even though the Red Wings were only a goal behind. I mean, it wasn't, the game had kind of slowed down. The pace had kind of slowed down. There weren't a lot of chances. It wasn't like it was in the first half of the game, or certainly that first period, which was, just crazy. And I guess I'm trying to figure out, he is just not happy with his goaltending. He's not cutting anybody any slack. I mean, he didn't say, "Well, yeah, nice rebound performance from Jimmy," or he gave up that shorthanded breakaway, but after that, he really tightened up and played well. He didn't go there. He said, "Hey, the guy wasn't even really tested." I mean, let's just forget about that. We keep saying the same thing over and over and over and over again. The puck's just going into our net, and we got to clean that up. I mean, I guess I don't even know. I guess I'm mini ranting here, Kevin. I'm not sure exactly if I'm asking something or just saying something or making a statement. But Babcock is, and I think again, just he can't figure it out. I mean, I think, as you said, if you were to ask Mike Babcock if he had a goaltending issue the last couple of weeks of the season, he would have told you that they weren't a playoff team then. That this would have been an ongoing thing. That if we having goaltending issues 2 weeks before the playoffs, chances are, we're looking for a goalie then. Something's either they all got hurt or something catastrophic, which seems to be my word of the day, happened. But I think he's, in all his years of coaching, I don't think he's ever experienced anything quite like this.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is a unique situation, and let's look at it from Mike Babcock's perspective. He brought in Jimmy Howard, who's a veteran goalie, who's relieving the younger goalie who played well on Saturday, but has not played well against the Islanders, and seemed to be giving up bad angle goals and being a little bit over aggressive, and just was not sharp. I mean, it was pretty clear, anybody watching Mrazek, that he was not on his game, and he asked him to come in and sort of stop the bleeding, and Howard gives up a breakaway short-handed goal, and I remember, and I've told this story before, but I was talking to Harry Sinden about goaltending. He said, when he was the GM of the Bruins, and he said, I hate it when coaches say, well, you can't blame the goalie, we gave up too many breakaways. And he said, we can blame the goalie, because he said, when I pay the goalie, I'm not giving him money to make the routine saves, because everybody can do that. A goalie can stop the puck. I'm paying him top dollar to stop the breakaways, to make the big save when our team needs a big save. And that's why Jimmy Howard is getting the money he is to stop that shorthanded breakaway attempt. It isn't to stop the 50-footer from just inside the blue line when he's got a clear sight to the puck. There are a lot of goalies who can do that. You're paying the goalie to make the big save, and he did. And so, from Babcock's perspective, I'm sure he's thinking, okay, we needed Howard to make one big save in that game on that breakaway, and he was 0 for 1. Because I don't remember another save that was as important as that one. And when at the end of the day, that was a very big save, and he didn't make it. So I'm sure he's looking. Howard came in and was a C or C minus performance. Mrazek was a D minus performance, and now it's Tuesday, and I'm playing a big game against the Ottawa Senators, and I'm just hoping that my goalies are going to be B or B plus or A minus performers on Tuesday.
Can we draw any kind of conclusion about Jimmy Howard based on what's happened this season? Last year he didn't have a good year. He bounced back. He's had numerous second chances, I think, with this organization, or I know some of the organization think that he has, and that he's really running out of opportunities. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, I don't think he's running out. I think most of the circumstances with Howard have been not the situations where you thought it was the end of the line. Like he was, let's not forget he was having a really strong season up until the injury, right. And the injury has really sort of derailed where he was at. I mean, he had a lot of momentum. He was playing at a high level. He had played some very big games, and he looked like he could be a top 10 goalie. Like, I don't think the Red Wings expect Jimmy Howard to be a top 5 goalie in the league. They would like it, but I don't think they're counting on that. But I think they would like him be in that 9, 10, 11, 12 range, where he's a little bit better than average. I think probably he was at the start of the season. So I think from the Red Wings perspective, what they're thinking now is we would like to just get him back to where he was at the start of the season, when he was confident and performing at a high level. But I don't see this as him being at a crossroads in his career. I think if Mrazek was performing at a more consistent level, you might think that. But, I don't think the Monster is a long-term, Red Wing. And, Mrazek still hasn't demonstrated that he can do it on a consistent basis. I mean, he's had flashes, and we all know his potential. But, at this point, he's had ups and downs as well. So, I think Jimmy Howard is still the number 1 goalie for the foreseeable future, unless this slump that he's in continued into the postseason and beyond.
You know, we have a tendency to talk about must-wins or biggest game of the season and statement games, and we that's what we do. We throw that stuff around, and it's enjoyable to create that kind of thing. But I kind of take the same approach that Mike Babcock takes when covering a team. I don't make up the stories. I mean, I just follow a storyline that pretty much that they're telling, that they're writing as they go along. Much like he says, I don't dole out ice time. They determine that. And the way I'm looking at it right now, when I look at the Red Wings game tomorrow against the Ottawa Senators, if they beat Ottawa and make it a 2-point game, no 3-point game, but if they would be, then I believe that they would be what? Are they 5 or 6 points ahead of them now? That would be an 8-point cushion. So maybe they knock Ottawa out of a slot, meaning that I mean, this game tomorrow is absolutely gigantic, and we'll get to Boston later. I mean, this is a must-win. Don't leave any doubt. Make a statement to this team that's playing. They're the talk of the league because Canada's going nuts for this team, and the Hamburglar, whom I still can't believe is the same guy I covered when he was at Bowling Green. Now, no offense, Hammond, but you weren't that great back then. But I mean, I guess I just can't state how important this game is tomorrow night against Ottawa. I mean, it begins, you can't look at the whole week. You got to take it one at a time, the old cliche, and this is a big one tomorrow.
Well, absolutely it is, because, the Red Wings are not a team that, makes the playoffs some years and then don't make it the next, and, are on for 2 and off for 1 and on for 2. This is a team that's made the playoffs for consecutive for a quarter of a century. This is a major streak going on here. The Sharks are going to fall out, and then we won't have any other team that's made it, in consecutive years since the lost NHL season because of the lockout. And meanwhile, the Red Wings are clicking along on 24 seasons. So this is a huge game. I mean, I think they're going to make the playoffs. I don't think the danger level is high for them missing, but it could happen. And the only reason we allow for that is that they have not played well. Like, if you watch the Sunday game, any of our listeners to this podcast, I mean, this was a meeting of two teams that were both playing pretty sloppy hockey. A 2-0 lead quickly, then the Islanders come back. The Red Wings goaltending was not good. These were not two teams that seemed ready for the postseason. Both of them looked, sloppy. So I think this is an important week because the two teams are right behind them in the playoffs. This Boston team is sort of remembered. They're the Bruins again, and this is the right time to get the Senators on Tuesday because Hammond is out for an upper back injury. He's probably out with a strained back from carrying that team. For the last 3 or 4 weeks, because he really has had him on his back. The Senators have played well, and I think one of the reasons the Senators played well is I think they're trying to get into the playoffs for Brian Murray, who's gone through a lot this season with cancer, and I think they like him a lot, and I think they would like to see him get in the playoffs. And at the GM meeting, someone asked him whether he was thinking about retiring, and he said, "Well, if we don't get in the playoffs," he joked, I have that option, and I'm sure his team saw that and said, we got to get it together, and they've continued to play well. So this will be a big game tomorrow, and I agree with you. We're not, creating this tension. I think the Red Wings have created the tension by, not performing the way they're capable of playing.
When they are scoring goals, and you have to think that they scored 2 quick goals yesterday. Then they fall behind to the Islanders 3-2, and then they tie it up, and it was a strange hockey game to say the least. I guess you could say, well, the Red Wings the past several seasons, and they really haven't done much in the playoffs since 2009. Their trouble really has been, you can say goaltending to a certain degree, but hardly ever, is that the fact is that they don't score goals. But now they're scoring goals, and so I'm going to pull Paul Coffey here in a way. Well, why can't we win playoff games 8-6? And that's because playoff games aren't 8-6. that they got to get the goaltending situation squared away because they're scoring a lot of goals right now, and guys seem to be coming out of their slump. Tatar's going to be a 30-goal scorer, it looks like. Nyquist has been around the net, and, it's had a little bit of tough, I think, in puck luck. I think he's still highly skilled, and, and I think it's a testament that these kids have not lost their they haven't lost their confidence. They're still plugging away at it. And, of course, Abdicator and Helm, we talked about them last show. But the fact is that if they can't get solid goaltending, it doesn't matter how many goals they're scoring right now, and whether they make it to the playoffs or not. Everything tightens up come playoff time. Referees kind of swallow the whistle. It's still, let the good old strapping lads out there settle the game themselves. I don't want to settle it. And that just doesn't bode well for a team like Detroit.
Well, no, because they don't, their defense, has to play a good team defensive game to be really, really effective. Like, you look at some of the defenses around, the NHL. Let's look at the New York Rangers, where they've got, McDonough and Stahl and Girardi, and he's hurt now, but Kevin Klein, and now Keith Yandel. Well, the first four guys of that are all known for their gritty defensive ability. And, the Red Wings defense has played, at the start of the season, played really sound team defense, but, it like nobody was saying, that Red Wings defense is hard to play against. So they have to play really to the best of their ability. And, that's been part of the problem down the stretch, is that the team has not played. I mean, I talked about it at length. And they finally, I thought, did a decent job of playing against the Tampa Bay Lightning, where they really limited the Lightning's ability to kind of create offense. And that's saying something, because that's a pretty dynamic group. Well, that's the way they played at the start of the season. And then they got away from that, I thought, on Long Island. And when I was watching how they got away from that, what it reminded me of was just what we had said before. If your goaltending's not right, nothing is right. And, everybody plays differently. They all say they don't, but they do. They're worried about what's happening behind them. So the offensive players don't charge up ice with as much confidence as they do when the goaltending is hot and they know their back end is being watched. And I think the defense isn't as effective as well. So I think this goaltending issue has had a cumulative effect on the whole team. Like, I think it's really sort of put everyone off center, and nobody kind of feels confident and right about it. So I think they've got to get it resolved, and hope that in the postseason, as you said, that Nyquist and Tatar learned from last season, and Datsuk and Zetterberg can stay healthy. That's the key.
I want to get in. I think with Datsuk back, we've seen just how great a player he is, and that. Yeah, I don't care if he's 100 years old. He's still a dominant force out there. But before we get there, Kevin, I wanted to run something by you. One of the funniest statistics come playoff time is you take a team like the Detroit Red Wings, whom are one of the least penalized teams in hockey, virtually dead last, 30 out of 30 teams in fighting majors. Once the playoffs start, they practically lead the league in penalty time. And a lot of times they do. And they laugh about it. They can't understand. Is that because the nature of the game changes? And we're not saying the Red Wings are not a tough team, but because it's ratcheted up physically and they let you get away with a little bit more come playoff time. And during the course of a playoff series where the Red Wings are not the largest team in the world, by their own admission, that they get kind of worn down, which means they get tired, which means that it leads to clutching and grabbing and taking a penalty or two.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the Red Wings just say that the officials are have it in for them, but I think it is exactly the way you said it. I mean, there is just a lot more aggressive play, and there's more retaliation because of that. You do get worn down, and also, I mean, everybody's just more aggressive. So, you're forced to make holds and hooks to keep them away from the goal. I mean, because every goal is so important. Sometimes you just let the guy go and hope that in the regular season and hope the goalie makes a save. You don't do that in the postseason. In the postseason, you pull them down, or you hack at their ankles, or you do whatever you got to do. Everybody knows the story of Bobby Clark breaking Harlamov's.
Right.
Well, that's sort of a playoff mentality. And that's the way the Red Wings played during their championship years. I mean, if everyone thinks back to '97 and '98, like the Red Wings were a relentless, ruthless group in the postseason. I mean, they did whatever it takes to win, and I think there's still some carryover for them. So, excuse me, they're going to get more penalties in the postseason than they will in the regular season.
Right. Well, I mean, I can't tell you how many times Henrik Zetterberg, I'll just be sitting there talking to him, and he'll say, Art, explain this to me. How can the least penalized team during the regular season be the most penalized team come playoff time? I don't get it. I don't understand. And I say, hey, Hank, you're talking to the wrong guy here, Z. I'm not the guy to be talking to because I'm right on your ship. I'm leading that bandwagon. But a thing that I find interesting about that, and one of the things that really took off from our last episode on episode 9 of the Red and White Authority was where we talked about if the Red Wings don't make the playoffs, which is a total collapse, and again, I want to assure our audience, Kevin and I both believe that they're going to make the playoffs. It's a little more dicey than we I think we both would like. I don't want to put words in Kevin's mouth, but the fact is that if they don't make the playoffs and they're eliminated early again, and you can't really judge last year, they were eliminated. They were swept by Boston, so you can't really even gauge that the transition that we thought may be gradual or that they're already in, they could kind of blow it up. And I want to expound on that because people have asked me, well, what do you mean by that? What were you guys talking about? Ken Holland said, and Kevin, I know you've touched upon this in previous episodes, Ken Holland has said, listen, we can't change our team overnight. We can't. If we got to be Eastern Conference style, we got to be bigger or grittier or whatever we have to do, we can't. It's going to be a gradual process. If they fail again in year number 2 in the Eastern Conference and are an easy out again like they were last year, I think that's what I was alluding to, is that they might accelerate that process, and guys that we thought might be Red Wings here for a while or a long time, they may have to trade. And, a guy that I know that they like and has come on and we've talked about, maybe you have to part with a Brendan Smith if you want to get Dion Phaneuf. Maybe you're going to have to do that as much as you don't want to, but yet then again, it's changing not so much the culture as it is the physical makeup of the team, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's what you were alluding to, but people really wanted me to kind of expound on that and say, well, where are you going with that one?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. That's exactly what we were talking about. Like, by accelerating, instead of making like one forward change where you add a big player, like we've already talked about before, like adding an Eric Cole. Right. Which brings some toughness on one of among your top 6 forwards. So right now you've got Sheehan, who's a pretty big-bodied guy. You've got Eriksson, who plays physical, but he's not considered one of the heavy hitters in the NHL. Cronwall will deck people, but those are few and far between. Cronwall is a good defender, but he's not known for running somebody over every other game. So if they were an early out again, maybe it's the difference between, do they make the trade for Dion Phaneuf or they don't. If they have a long run, then they'll say, okay, we don't really need a guy like that, who has sort of underachieved by what people thought he was going to be. But if they're an easy out, then maybe they say, okay, well, we could toughen up this team a little bit by bringing in a Dion Phaneuf and playing him in our second pairing. So, those are the kind of issues, and maybe you make that trade and bring in a big winger, where if you have a pretty good run in the playoffs, I think they're going to try to add some size to this team, regardless of how they do in the playoffs. But maybe they just add one player if they have success in the postseason, where they might add 2 or 3 different players with some toughness if they don't.
Well, the free agent class isn't very good, so if they're really going to do something like that, I think they're going to have to actually trade players off their roster. I don't know if there is an elixir out there in the free agent market.
No, there isn't, for sure. And I'm not sure that I think that ship has sailed. Like, if you look at the history in the playoffs now, or excuse me, the history in terms of since the lockout and since the introduction of the salary cap, teams have all managed to keep most of their top players. Like there's only 2 or 3 players every summer that are considered upper echelon players that everybody tries to get. The rest of them are, players that have ended up there out of circumstances. Either they're, older players or they didn't like the team they were in. But, it's rare that the stars are getting into the unrestricted free agent category. So I don't think that the free agent marketplace is where you're going to be able to find, premium players. I think occasionally you'll find some guys that can help you. Like if you look at last year, Niskanen was there. Well, I mean, do we consider Niskanen like a difference-making player? He was a good defenseman, and everybody, the cap was probably overpaid to get him. He's an effective player, but he's not Drew Doughty, and yet he got paid as if he was a top player. So, if the Red Wings want to, change their team, they're going to have to adjust their draft strategy, which I'm sure they'll do and are doing. And I think they're going to have to look at trades. That's why I think Dion Phaneuf would be the type of guy that that could change the sort of look of your team because he can play a tougher role on defense, and he gives your defense a little more bite.
I've been asked this by several Red Wing fans that say, why would Brendan Shanahan ever do business with the Detroit Red Wings? Why would he trade his captain, Dion Phaneuf, to Detroit, a team that he's going to have to battle for a playoff spot for the next several years? A team that he's very familiar with their management style. Yes, Brendan Shanahan, he considers himself a Red Wing. I mean, as a player, that was the team that he most identified with. My response has been, it would maybe have to be a 3-player trade, and the only one I could think of was when Kyle Quincy was traded to Tampa Bay from Colorado. So Colorado didn't trade Kyle Quincy to Detroit. Tampa Bay did for a #1 pick, by the way, and maybe it would be something like that where at least Shanny could say, look, I didn't trade him. I traded him to, Phoenix or, Arizona, and they traded him to the Red Wings. It was a 3-player deal, or do you think that the people are reading too much into that? I mean, if it's Brendan Smith and a 3rd-round pick and maybe a young defenseman or something, maybe 2nd-level prospect or something, bam, that Brendan would take that deal.
Well, I think I don't think his first choice is to trade him within his division. I think you look to trade him to the West. I mean, the trade where everybody suggested that the Kings might be looking at Phaneuf, like that made a lot of sense to me. I mean, he's certainly a King-style player. He's a Sutter type of player. He would fit into their second pairing. It would be a cap issue, so the Maple Leafs would have to eat some money, and he gets them out of the conference. So I think that's his first priority would be to do that. But it doesn't always work out that way, and sometimes you got to do what you can get. But the talks that were going on between the Maple Leafs and the Red Wings were real, and they wouldn't have had any discussion if the Maple Leafs had said we won't trade him within the division. So I don't think it's his first choice, but I think if that's the best deal, he'll make that deal.
Well, I think we know for a fact that certainly Dion Phaneuf's wife would love to see him as a Los Angeles King.
Yeah,
that would be sure. It's kind of like Mike Fisher being traded to the Nashville Predators. I'm sure, Carrie Underwood was doing cartwheels down, the big avenue there in whatever Nashville's big Main Street is. Maybe it's probably Main Street. So I could see him wanting to go out to California, and where his wife, basically, the world famous Elisha Cuthbert, whom, as we all know, if you're a 24 fan, and the Red Wings were back then, we used to talk about that. At least her character jumped the shark in that episode when she was stalked by the cougar. I don't know if you ever watched that. But, she had a cougar that was stalking her, and she couldn't somehow elude the thing. So, but anyway, I digress. I think I'm so worried about the Red Wings, and I'm trying to figure out what the heck is going on. I'm doing a stream of consciousness show here today, but. let's look at it. What needs to happen for the Red Wings to beat the Ottawa Senators? They showed, against Tampa. Now, what was interesting too, and Kevin, I know I talked to you earlier today about this. I watched like Tampa TV or Bolts TV or whatever it's called on the internet, where they talked to Steve Stamkos and a couple of other Lightning, and then their coach Coach Cooper, and they pretty much didn't give the Red Wings much credit at all. They pretty much talked about how terrible they were, how they didn't do enough. Ben Bishop talked about, weird bounces, odd goals, they're 3-1 against Detroit this year. They'll take that. Which was kind of odd, because usually, the Red Wings don't talk that way when they beat a team or they lose. You know what I mean? They're a little bit different that way. Maybe Tampa, they're a younger team, I guess, but I just thought it was kind of odd the way that they talked, because I thought that the Red Wings did play defensive hockey great. They limited the shots. I mean, they played with a sense of urgency and desperation, and they kind of did against the Islanders too. Yesterday we kept hearing things about, well, we did a lot of good things, but the puck kept going into our net. They went back to that old refrain. But now you've got games that you have to win. I mean, if you want to make it easy on yourselves, because the schedule after they play Minnesota, the next day they host the Washington Capitals, and then it's Carolina, who's been a pretty hot team here the second half, Montreal, and then at Carolina. So, I mean, it's not easy for them. What needs to change tomorrow? Can they go back? Can they duplicate the Tampa effort? Or, again, like we said, Mrazek had to stand on his head and he got a shutout. Does Jimmy Howard really, to assure success tomorrow, does Jimmy have to somehow find his way out of this red and white haze that he's been in?
Well, first of all, let me kind of address what you were talking about with regard to the way coaches and players see a game in the NHL. Players generally, I've covered the league a long time, always say, well, let's give the other team some credit here. They always say that. A coach acts as if the NHL game is played against no one.
Right.
Because always after the game, they never pay any homage to what the other team was doing to try to slow them down. It's always what we didn't do. And nobody says, well, the other team just played so well, we couldn't get anything done. They always just say, well,
they're better than us. So
yeah. So, but what the Red Wings need to do is play the way they did at the start of this season, and the way they did against Tampa, and the way they did, I felt at the end of the Islanders game, when they really didn't give them very many chances, the Islanders I'm speaking about, and they didn't give the Lightning very many chances. I mean, the emphasis in, say, the third period of the Islander game and throughout the Tampa Bay game was on playing good team defensive play, getting the puck back, maintaining possession of the puck, preventing the other team from mounting any level of attack, and that's how they have to be successful. That's how their offense is generated, when they can get that puck out of their zone in a hurry. As I've said over and over, but it's true, the Red Wing forwards, their speed up front, they know what to do with it when they get the puck, but you just got to get it out of your zone, because, the Red Wings' expertise, particularly with their forwards, is not in defending their own zone. Their expertise is moving the puck up and getting scoring chances. It's up to the defense on this team to keep that puck out of the zone, and up to the forward. So I think they got to play a clean, safe, simple defensive game, and then count on their forwards to being better than the Senators' forwards. And just look at the lineups. You look at the Senators' lineup and look at the Red Wings and tell me who's better up front, who's more dangerous, who has more dangerous scores. I think the answer, in my opinion, is the Red Wings. They have a better group up front. So it just seems to me, if the Red Wings defense can play a good, sound, solid game and count on the forwards to do the rest, they'll get it done.
Well, Nicholas Kronwall, looks relatively healthy. He had a nice goal yesterday. He does that little, I don't know if it's a stutter step, but, when he skates in there and pauses and then he goes in again and really, fires that puck. He scored an overtime goal against the Dallas Stars in Dallas a few weeks back at the start of that 6-game road trip. But when you really look at the defense, I just don't think Jonathan Erickson, and we've talked about it, like, I don't know, I think it was episode 2 of the Red and White Authority. Jonathan Erickson, for me, and we've talked about it, seems to be making chances. Brendan Smith, I think for the most part, has had a pretty good year. I know Red Wing fans are howling at that one. Kyle Quincy's never going to catch a break in Detroit, as we very well know. Danny DeKeyser, most Red Wing fans you talk to thinks that, he's going to be a number 2, or he's a top 4 at least, and he's a budding superstar. I'm not so sure about that. I mean, I have nothing against Danny DeKeyser. Maybe he's learning the game. I think his decision making is questionable at times, and I'm not so sure. I thought he was a better skater, and maybe he's it's the course of a long season, and he's still getting used to the wear and tear of an 82 games schedule. And it looks like Zidlicki is maybe kind of leveling off a little bit. I mean, he's still kind of in position, but I think we're seeing the kind of the flaws in his defensive game, shall we say. So, I mean, it's not a pretty picture back there, I don't think, Kev.
Well, no, it hasn't been, and that's been part of the issue with the goaltending as well. I mean, it's all, everything is out of sync. But I think, the chicken and the egg, I think the bad goaltending has led to the sloppier defense as well. But, I'm a DeKeyser guy. I'm bullish on him, and I like the way he skates. But if you ask, like, the pro scouts about DeKeyser, they think the people in Detroit think more of him than people around the league. Like, they don't think he, has the ability to step up and be a top-pairing defenseman or, anything of that. That what you see is what you get from him. That, he can be a solid, dependable guy, but he's not going to be a difference in a playoff series. But I think he's he does. I think he's just kind of scratching the surface of his offensive ability, in my opinion. I mean, I think he's really never played an offensive role, and I think since he's gotten to the NHL, he's kind of discovered that, hey, I do have the ability to find some seams, and I can skate and get in there. So I think we're going to see kind of more from him. But I think everybody sort of had their ups and downs. We knew what Zidlicki was when he came over, that he's particularly at this stage of his career, he's more about puck possession, and I think his one-on-one defensive skills are adequate. But I don't think he's Rafalski by any stretch, who I thought was as good defensively as he was offensively. And I think with all the struggles that the goaltending has gone through, I think it's just made it harder on this defense, which is not a premium group, as everyone knows. But the point I bring up when readers ask me about how good this defense is, I said, well, think of that Devils group that made the Stanley Cup final a few years ago. This group's as good as that group, for sure. I mean, Cronwell would love to. I think most teams would love to have Cronwell on their team. So I think this defense can be fine. But it has to be playing in harmony with a goaltender who's on top of his game, and the Red Wings don't have goaltending right now. That's at the top of their game.
I mean, again, look, and I want to say this about Danny DeKeyser. The way I look at it is that I'm not so sure he's going to have a metamorphosis this season and blossom into this perennial all-star. I'm thinking that to me, he looks a little bit fatigued. That's all. I mean, that's really what I'm trying to say. He just looks a little bit tired in his decision-making because he's slow. I think he's still learning the game, I guess. And you always want a local guy to do well, and and I think the Red Wings will tell you. I mean, let's face it. He has high expectations when Mike Babcock says if he didn't play those last 10 games of the season, 2 years ago, we wouldn't have made the playoffs. So, that rings true with fans. That's something that, he's never, not that he's never going to live down. I mean, it's not like Sparky and Chris Pitaro or anything many, many years ago, or Torey Lavello, but, but he has shown something. With all that said, and you're talking about goaltending, it appears another thing that has been bandied about by fans is that the Red Wings look like they have confidence in Peter Mrazek, and they don't look like they have confidence in Jimmy Howard. That's why they seem to be out of their element, make mistakes, don't trust anything going on. And as you said, and I'm not trying to piggyback on you, said, well, subpar goaltending leads to the defenseman trying too hard and making mistakes. That's why you have defensive breakdowns. Do you see that? Do you think that, and this could be a subconscious thing, really, that the Wings are much, feel a little more comfortable where they're at this point in the season with Mrazek in net as opposed to Jimmy? And I'm not saying that they don't have confidence in Jimmy. They just feel better about Mrazek in net.
Well, I wouldn't even go that far. What I would say is right now, before the meltdown on Sunday when Mrazek didn't play well, I think that everybody sensed that Howard was not on top of his game. I mean, if you go back to earlier in the season when he was playing well, everybody was in harmony. They felt good about Howard. But now they can sense, they can feel, they know better than we do that he's not on top of his game. So I think that's been the issue, is that at that point, I think they were relieved that Mrazek got to start on Saturday, because I think they knew that Howard was not on top of his game. Now, what they feel about it today after the way Mrazek played, I don't know. We're going to have to see Tuesday. I would guess that they're hoping Jimmy Howard comes back and he's the goalie that he was at the start of the season. That it's the ups and downs of a professional team. I know fans always say to me, "Well, they're pros. How could they go through these periods where they lose their confidence and and not just goalies but goal scorers and everything else?" And I said, "Well, it's because they're human. I mean, we all do. There are great painters that have 2 or 3 year periods where they can't paint, and writers who have some novels that are better than others. And that's just the way it is. That's the human aspect of talent, and I think that's the way that the Red Wing probably teammates are right now. Where on Saturday I think they were happy to see Mrazek, and tomorrow they'll probably be happy to have Jimmy Howard back because it didn't go well on Sunday, and we all know that in sports it's only as good as what happened in your last game.
Right, and and if neither one of those guys is holding up their end of the bargain, you can always look towards and see if the Munster is ready to go in and play his 1 or 2 games before he injures a fingernail or something. I mean, I'm joking, but he always does seem to get hurt because obviously they like him. They actually they've never said anything when you talk about Jonas Gustafsson with the Red Wings, whether it's the brass or the team. They all think he's a good goalie. They like having him in net. They think that he always gives them a chance to win. And then they kind of shake their head and say, but, the guy can't stay out of the sick bay, so to speak. So, but, he could be called upon, too. I mean, they're in that kind of situation. Let's look at this week now. I know that I believe tomorrow the Boston Bruins are playing the Florida Panthers, who really have an outside shot, but if they're going to have any shot at all, they've got to beat the Boston Bruins tomorrow. The game is in Boston, but, the Panthers did their thing and beat the Senators. And the Senators have not been playing all that well. I mean, they thought that they had 2 points against the Leafs on Sunday, only to find themselves give up a goal. I don't know, it was in the last minute of play, and then to lose in overtime. So they did get a point out of that game, but they haven't been. They've been kind of struggling. When you look at this, best case scenario obviously would be for the Red Wings to make these. And I think we should stress this. It would be better if the Red Wings are going to win, make them 2-point games, don't make them 3-point games, obviously. But aside from that, and then go to Minnesota and somehow beat the Wild, which they could possibly do. The least amount of points that they can get and still be in good shape, and obviously we know the most amount of points that they could get. I mean, how do you see this thing playing out? What do they need to do besides win every game, which is really the obvious?
Well, I mean, I think just to make the playoffs, what they really need to do is just to beat the Ottawa Senators, tomorrow, which I think, as you pointed out, gives them, because they're the team that they've got to stay ahead of to assure that they're, that's where the team below the wild card. Mm-hmm. So I think that's, the next game is their biggest game, and then you can sort it out after that. I think the priority is to stay. If you're the Red Wings, you're telling yourself, despite how poorly they've played recently and all of their goaltending issues, you can convince yourself that they have a shot to knock off either Montreal or Tampa Bay. And I say that because, Montreal, you look at their roster, And to me, they're all about Carey Price. Now, doesn't mean they're not a good team, because they are a good team. They've been very consistent this season, but they're not a scary good team. Like, you don't look at them and say, "Boy, we just can't topple that group." They're just too good. What you say is, if we can just get some goals by Carey Price, we have a shot, because their offense, isn't world class. And then Tampa Bay now, Jason, Garrison is out now for probably the first round of the playoffs, from what it sounds.
Right.
And Suster is out as well right now, and there seems to be some doubt about how long he's going to be out. They haven't played particularly well of late. Bishop has no playoff experience. You've shut them out in their last game. So there's question marks there. So, if you're the Red Wings, you want to stay right where you're at. You want to stay in that third spot. So that's why I think you got to look at this as you got to take down both the Senators to make sure you've got your playoff spot, and then the Bruins, because you want to hold third place.
Really, I think that I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, if you take care of Ottawa, I'm not saying you're going to assure yourself a playoff spot, but you're getting pretty darn close to assuring yourself a playoff spot, because the games keep going down and down and down, and there's only 2 weeks of the season. Let's talk about Pavel Datsyuk, because I think it's pretty remarkable that who knows what the lower body injury was this time. Everyone's saying a knee, and we know a knee bothered him last year, and in typical Red Wing / Scotty Bowman fashion, he could have a strained shoulder for all we know. But with all that said, he is a remarkable hockey player, Kevin. And I know that you're a really big who isn't a Wayne Gretzky admirer, but he seems to have that knack of thinking ahead of the game. And I'm not so sure, and I know Sidney Crosby's a great player, and he has that sort of ability. I'm not so sure since Gretzky, though, has there been a player that anticipates as well as Pavel Datsyuk. Am I overstating it? Am I being too much of a Red Wing homer here?
No, not at all, because, whenever they do those polls and players are asked who's the one guy in the league you like to watch, it's always Datsyuk. Players always marvel at his ability to to pick their pocket, or to, as you said, anticipate and forecast what's going to happen next on the ice and be exactly where you need to be. And he just has so many different weapons. He's a great defensive forward who can strip the puck away and then turn it around. He's a good goal scorer. He has a variety of different shots. He can put it high into the net. He can make a move, and that's one of the things that is sort of a lost art in hockey, is the ability to be able to dangle the puck and to stick handle around guys. He can still do that, and that's not a art form that coaches tend to appreciate. So guys don't work on it as much anymore. But he's still very adept at that, and he can score on a backhand, a forehand, a deflection. He's a very, very skilled hands guy. So it was really, when he's not in the lineup because he's old, you start to say, well, they're going to have to learn to live without him anyway. And then you see him back in the lineup against the Islanders, and you realize how much they still need him desperately, because and I thought it was a very telling stat that they had on the screen when they showed him in the last 10 minutes of the game, how many points he has, where I think he's leading the league in late heroic points.
Right. Points in overtime, points when in the last 10 minutes of the game. He's among the league leaders in the top 3 in all those categories, which really does show just how good a player that he is, and how smart he is. And the thing is, and this is, he's one of those intangible players, because you can see it. He gives the players around him confidence, and he truly does make players around him better. And the more they play with him, they anticipate. It's fun to watch him, and I think that's why when Henrik Zetterberg and Pavel Datsyuk kind of broke in right around the same time or started playing together, they seemed to anticipate each other very, very well. And and it just seemed to be that they had been playing together all their lives. But I think that's because they're both elite level talent players that are able to mesh, and that are very similar in the way they think the game. and you can tell that the more players play with Datsyuk, they're starting to think the game his way, or and you can tell it's really weird when he gets out there. It seems like Red Wing players and the opposition, everybody's looking at him, and the Red Wing players are all anticipating what he's going to do. But since the Wings players are familiar with him, chances are they're guessing kind of right. Where the defense player, you can almost think, just do not embarrass me. I don't want to fall flat on my keister here or anything. And it's amazing to watch a player like when Datsyuk is on the ice, how everything centers and focuses in around him. It is truly an amazing thing to watch.
Well, absolutely, and I've heard more than one player say that when Datsyuk's coming on them, what they want to do is get rid of the puck because they don't want to get it stripped from them. And I know Drew Doughty talked about that with me, where especially early in his career, he said he'd see Datsyuk coming after him, and he'd say, I got to get rid of this puck now because no one wants to be embarrassed. But because not only does he take the puck from the players, but he turns it quickly into a scoring chance. It's not like he gets the puck away and then he's got to find somebody to dump it off to. He'll take it and then drive the net, or make a quick pass, and then suddenly it's a pickpocket that turns into a scoring chance that turns into a goal. So he's still a valuable player. He still can play at a high level, and I think in some regards he's playing as well as he did when he was younger, because I think he sort of has figured out the economy of energy. Like, he's figured out late in his career how he can be just as effective by kind of saving his energy and turning it on the right time, as in late in the game.
Yeah, well, he truly is. I mean, I know last week people were accusing me of coming down on him, like, hey, it's playoff time, Datsyuk must be hurt. And it's not so much, I get disappointed because obviously, and you just have to see the way he plays, that they certainly do still need him, and he makes all of them better. Unfortunately, he can't stop the puck, and that seems to be the biggest issue right now for the Red Wings. I don't see Datsyuk suiting up in net anytime soon. Jimmy Bedard's a great goaltending coach, perhaps the best. One is certainly one of the best in the league, but I don't think he could even turn Datsyuk into a goalie, and that seems to be the issue. Kevin, big game tomorrow. I'm looking. Maybe we better go Wednesday to see what happens against the Senators and preview what's going to go on with the Bruins.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Let's just go ahead and plan that on Wednesday, and y'all be at the game tomorrow night, and I'm sure you'll be watching, and we'll sort of address the situation and see where we are in net with the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, certainly we will. And as soon as I can get some medical clearance to actually do something except sit around and admire my beautiful statues back here, or the books that I have to read, I will certainly be back at the Joe myself. Kevin, always a pleasure. Look forward to it. Look forward to the Red and White Authority episode 11. This, of course, is episode 10. Enjoy. A lot of great hockey games on tonight. I mean, Tampa Bay and Montreal. That should be a good one. Although Johnson is out of the Tampa Bay lineup too, so. That's not good. That's not good for the Lightning. But we'll see what happens there. Still, at this point, Montreal or Tampa. I mean, the Rangers an outside shot. One of those two teams is probably the team the Red Wings are going to play. So until we meet again, which will be Wednesday, for Kevin Allen, I'm Art Regner. This is the Red and White Authority. Have a safe and pleasant one, everyone. We'll see you. Bye-bye.